What's up, y'all? It's the heavy hitter, big Spanish DJ Enuff, world famous heavy hitters. We're talking about an incredible time, crazy time. September 10th, I knew exactly where I was. I remember the day before 9/11, I was at Nori's grimy video shoot.
What's up, y'all? It's DJ Drewski, the heavy hitter, the movement, Hot 97. But I cannot believe it's been 20 years since Jay-Z's The Blueprint. 20 years.
I was supposed to do the morning show like I normally did at that time. I think I was with Star and Buck Wild at that time. And we would normally go through that Battery Tunnel into Manhattan, which was a real hot spot, if you know anything about Ground Zero. When I went food shopping at 4 a.m. in the morning with my man Haitian Pat, who goes food shopping at 4 a.m.? But I did. By the time I got home, it was probably 6, fell asleep. And all I remember was the phone ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. And I guess it was my ex-wife trying to get me up and tell me what's happening. Because first plane hit, I was sleeping right through it. By the time I got up, I got to see the second plane hit. And I was like, wow. I actually thought it was a movie. That's how crazy it was. I was like, yeah, this movie's crazy. Because I was half asleep. Never got a chance to make it to the station because of the craziness. Phone lines were dead. I lost my mom for a while, but it was crazy. But in retrospect, when I think back, there was 2 albums that dropped. I know Fabulous's album dropped and Jay-Z's album dropped. Those are albums that we were all looking forward to. The city was waiting and thirsty for. You know, prior to that, Jay-Z had performed the diss record to Queens, Mobb Deep, and Nas at Summer Jam live. And then he premiered Ace to the Izzo live on stage with his crew. And it was like magic, you know, because to me, as many Summer Jams have we put on, I don't think anybody in the history of Summer Jam has turned that building inside out like Jay-Z.
So listen, when this album was going to come out, there was a lot of hype behind it. I myself was super excited because Jay-Z, at that time, I didn't go to Summer Jam that year. I don't remember why, but I didn't go. Anyway, that was like one of the biggest Summer Jam performances and just like biggest things that happened at Summer Jam ever. So congratulate you played yourself to myself for not going to Summer Jam that year. But anyway, that was the year that Jay-Z performed. I think that was the same year he might have brought out Michael Jackson, but besides the point, he performed Takeover at that Summer Jam. And when he performed that's the infamous thing with performing Takeover and this whole Summer Jam screen. He put Prodigy on the Summer Jam screen in his old dancing outfit, whatever. So imagine that. That's where the actual saying, put you on the Summer Jam screen, came from. I missed that Summer Jam. Congratulations again. But anyway, he puts Prodigy on the screen and he does Takeover. I remember hearing about it and then actually hearing it on the radio because K-Slay recorded the song. Or somebody had like a camera or something while they were there at the show and they recorded it. They took that audio and they were playing it on the radio. And it was a big thing because Jay-Z had this Prodigy and it was crazy. And then he ended the song by saying, ask Nas, he don't want it with Hove, but then actually do the Nas verse. He just left it like that. And most people didn't even know there was a big problem with Jay-Z and Nas. Most people thought it was obviously competitive, but nobody knew it was some sort of issue. So when he said, ask Nas, he don't want it with Hove, no, everybody was like, whoa.
Yo, it's DJ Wild. I represent Hot 97 and the heavy hitters. I can't believe it's been 20 years since Jay-Z dropped The Blueprint, the first one, by the way. I was in high school when it dropped. It was a very much anticipated album, and it happened to drop on the same day as 9/11. We all know what that was about. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. Hopefully, I'll never experience anything like that again. But with the album dropping on that day, of course, it was a major setback for anybody that dropped the album that day. I think Fabulous dropped his album that same day. And it actually took me a couple of weeks before everything started to try to get back to normal for me to really get to the album and listen to it.
I was 14 years old when I remember it dropping, right? So the anticipation of it at 14, now I'm a huge Jay-Z fan at this point. My older brother, I grew up on it. And it's like, okay, the Blueprint dropping September 11th. You know, at that time, gear up. You go stand in line, you buy the CDs. But then, of course, tragedy, right? 9/11 happens. And it was like, it was crazy because you're so excited for one thing. And then, boom, the world changes right there. And I think, it you know, for like 3 days, I kind of like forgot about the whole Blueprint, the whole drop, everything going on. And at 14 years old, I remember going down to like Canal Street. Now I'm from Jersey. I go into the city. I'm on Canal Street, handing out like water to the firefighters and police officers and everyone that was helping, you know, coming down the West Side Highway. And I did that for like 3 days. And then, you know, once you realize, okay, everything is like calm. There's gonna be no more destruction. You know, we're gonna get back to, you know, just cleaning this up and try to get back to regular life. And at that point, like 3 days later, it hit me. I was like, oh, Hove, the Blueprint. I gotta go listen to this. And I think that for me became the soundtrack of getting over everything that was happening in the world, right? Everyone is in fear. Everyone is sad. The world is upside down at that time. But then the Blueprint became, you know, the actual soundtrack to my life of, you know, a 14-year-old going through all this.
During these times, we were DJing on vinyl, all right? No CDJs, no Serato. And Def Jam used to always give us clean versions of advanced albums prior to their release date. So we could have them a week or two prior to them actually coming out. So we could get to hear them, get to enjoy them, get to kind of pick and choose what joints we like so we could play them on the radio. So that, if that was the case, I remember listening to Blueprint prior to its actual release date. So I didn't have to go to the record store that day. I didn't have to, you know, maybe a lot of you guys did, but I didn't have to. So we were lucky enough to kind of like get a piece of that action before it actually happened.
Everybody was anticipating this album. Plus, you know, Jay-Z being one of the biggest rappers at the time, you just didn't know what you were gonna get. So, you know, the album, fast forward, the day the album was supposed to come out, I remember I was in school when the whole 9/11 thing happened. And I shouldn't even say it like that. When 9/11 happened, I was in school, but I wasn't even thinking about as excited as I was for Blueprint. It was different back then. You had to go to the store and actually buy the CD or buy the record, buy the album. So it wasn't like you could just wake up at whatever at midnight and grab your phone and go to Apple Music or Tidal or whatever and just stream the album. You have to actually go out and get it. So since me being in school, I was going to probably go get it after school. We all know that didn't happen because of, you know, the whole 9/11, the attack on the towers happens. The Blueprint just comes back burner type stuff. I actually don't even remember how long after 9/11 I actually listened to the Blueprint. It was probably like, I want to say maybe later on that week that I actually got a chance to sit down and listen to this to the album in its entirety.
I would rank it probably in my top 5 of Jay-Z albums. You know, there was 3 installments of the Blueprint: Blueprint 1, Blueprint 2, and Blueprint 3. So I'll probably would rank that as the number 1 Blueprint album, but top 5 in all around Jay-Z albums. My favorite track on the album, believe it or not, is the track called Renegade, Jay-Z featuring Eminem. That's the one track that everyone says Jay-Z got that business. You know, Eminem, he was a monster back then, and Eminem did get Jay-Z that business. So out of all the tracks on the album, I think Renegade stuck out to me the most.
To me, one of the best albums Jay-Z's ever put out. Talks about wearing throwback jerseys, buckets. The cover art. The cover art is him smoking a cigar, and there's a cigar cutter on top of the desk I guess he's sitting on. And like even that, people are doing that now. I'm doing that now 20 years later. It's crazy. He was so far advanced and so far ahead of himself. The collaboration he had with Eminem on there with Renegades was incredible. I mean, there's a bunch of records. We can go on and on, but I think it's one of his best projects he ever dropped. Kanye West always talked about what he had coming because at that time, me and Kanye were real tight. We were always around each other. Kanye always expressed, like, you got to hear this when this drops on the Blueprint. It's crazy, blah, 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 blah. So he was very excited about it, always talking about what Jay-Z was going to do.
And now you got Jay dropping these records, and I feel like on that project, it was so much, versatility. When I say versatility, like you had different records. Of course, you had the Takeover record, that everyone was already, before the album dropped, everyone, that was the one, Takeover. Oh, the Nas, this going on in it. But then he had records like H to the Izzo and Girls, 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 the fun records. Of course, today as a DJ, still one of the biggest records I could drop in the club today is You Don't Know. When that intro comes on, boom, today, like right now, 20 years later, you drop You Don't Know in the club and it feels like it was yesterday.
The album was, whew, that is the album. People always talk about Reasonable Doubt and all the other Jay-Z albums, but that was the album. The Blueprint, in my opinion, was the album that cemented Jay-Z in like the Mount Rushmore and the history books and whatever conversations you want to have about rappers and hip hop and music and albums and singles and songs. This album itself is what put Jay-Z in that conversation with everybody, right? Like, because before you would be like, oh, Jay-Z, he's good, big, he's all right, but he's not really in the we gotta keep talking about this guy and that guy and this guy. What about that guy? What about this guy? No, the Blueprint put him in the conversation where it's like you can't have a conversation about rappers and hip hop and the best without talking about. Now Jay-Z is in that conversation. That cemented it.
Like I said, man, I can't believe it's been 20 years. It went by so fast. And the Blueprint, I think it stands up today. I think it's a classic. It's a few songs only, like the Takeover, the diss record when he dissed Nas and Mobb Deep and everyone else he had a problem with. Like I said, Renegade with Eminem. He had a lot of songs that I think still stand the test of time. Jay-Z's never been like a real big club person for me. Like I don't really play a lot of Jay-Z in the club, but the streets love him. Of course, the radio love him. And, he's one of them all-around artists that makes classic music, especially at that time when he was pumping out songs and albums every summer. Blueprint was definitely my top 5, and that album still ranks high and on my all-around overall Jay-Z albums.
But the lineup was insane. And outside of just the records, you go look at the producers. This was like, Kanye's outbreak right here. The Blueprint, I think Kanye produced like 4 records on that. And I was like, okay, as a young boy, you like, okay, I'm hearing about Kanye West. Let's see what he got. And I think that was Kanye's breakthrough on the Blueprint for me. Of course, Just Blaze Records. And it was just a weird time because you're going through everything that's happening in life, but then you got Jay-Z Blueprint that's guiding you, that's helping you, like getting you through these rough times. And you listen to Song Cry, right? He had Song Cry on that project. I'm sure it wasn't made for that, but the emotions in Song Cry, you start thinking everything just the feeling of the record got you thinking about what's going on in the world. You start crying, So I think, he just hit different emotional chords on it. If you wanted to be aggressive, you had those records. If you wanted to be happy and dancing, he had those records. And then if the emotional ones, you're going through a hard time, you turn on Song Cry to get you in your feelings. And then to top it off, the Eminem feature, right? Where everyone today debates, M went harder on Renegade than Hov did in this whole record, and you have that whole debate. But I think Eminem really showed out on that, and to see 2 greats working together, the project was just incredible. You had Kanye West breakthrough, you had features from Eminem, and it's, you're going through a crazy time. Like, those are moments that you'll never forget.
And this album, you also have to remember, man, Blueprint also, not only Jay-Z, but that album also cemented Kanye. That album cemented Just Blaze. These guys were producers that were making songs before this, but they hadn't really broken through to that superstar producer status. But this album right here, I think it's mostly produced by Kanye and Just. I think it has a couple other producers on there. Maybe like I think Timbaland is on there, Eminem is on there, but for the most part, it was Just and Kanye. And this just brought their level up when you talk about producers. Because before, you know, there was a bunch of producers and there was a bunch of things happening, but this album put these two guys, as much as it put Jay-Z up there, it brought Kanye and it brought Just along for the ride to be like that superstar. And then you have to remember, when you compare that to like albums that come out nowadays, that album literally had maybe one feature. It had some odd features like on Girls, 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 which was super hip hop because he had Biz Markie on there, he had Slick Rick on there, he had Q-Tip on there singing just the hook, parts of the hook. But as far as like other rappers, it only featured Eminem. Eminem is the only other rapper on that whole album.
To think back, like, yo, it's 20 years later, how time really flies. Like, you hear it all your life, oh, time flies. But we say it today to celebrate 20 years of the Blueprint. I'm like, damn, from 14, now I'm 34. It's like, holy shit, you know, it's crazy. But it was definitely a moment in time that we'll never forget.
For us, especially here on the East Coast, you know, like this is the guy who grew up in our backyard. So we watch every step, we watch every movement, everything that he's done, and it's always just been like perfect, at least for us. Blueprint, best album Jay ever did to me. I mean, there's some organic, original things that he's done before, you know, what singles and stuff, but as a body of work, I think this is the project that he put out that just changed the game.